All right, as promised, let's move on and look at some individual types of funds. We'll start with the closed-end company. So there are basically two ways that mutual funds organize: open-end and closed-end. So let's look at closed-end. So after a closed-end fund issues stock to raise money for the portfolio, it rarely issues or repurchases additional shares. The amount of money has been raised, and that money is then invested, and the investment company doesn't issue new shares or buy back new shares. The fund stock will typically trade on an exchange. If you want to buy into the mutual fund, you can buy it from someone else on the secondary market on an exchange. Frequently, the market price for a closed-end fund is somewhere between 5 and 20% below its net asset value. Do not ask me why. I'm not sure why funds trade below their net asset value, closed-end funds. Studies show that it is best not to buy a closed-end fund when it has its initial public offering. It's better to wait to see if the shares will decline to their typical discount of 5 to 20% below their net asset value, and then to buy. Okay, so typically what happens is these closed-end funds will issue shares and they'll make their investments, and then the price will drift down to a discount below net asset value, and that's when you want to buy it. All right, and now let's look at open-end companies. An open-end fund continues to sell and repurchase shares after the initial public offering. If you want to buy shares, you don't buy shares in an open-ended fund from an exchange. You buy it directly from the investment company itself. And if you want to sell your shares, you don't sell them on an exchange. You sell them back to the open-ended company. Okay? So each time an investor wants to put money into an open-end fund, they do so by purchasing new shares in the fund, and these shares are issued directly by the fund company. Similarly, each time an investor wants to take money out of an open-end fund, they do so by selling the shares back to the fund. Okay? Open-end funds account for the vast majority of mutual fund investments. Make sure we don't go too far here. All right. Now let's look at this big debate between load versus no load, and this has to do with open-end funds. In the investment business, the word load means sales charge or commission. A load means a sales charge or a commission. The load is a percentage of the fund's NAV. 1%, 2%. Here we go, we're going to look at it. A fund that does not charge a sales commission is referred to as a no-load fund. They have a management fee, but they don't charge an upfront commission to buy into the fund. Loads range from 2%, which would be considered to be a low-load fund. That means 98% of what you pay goes into the fund, and 2% is a sales charge. To 8%, or 8.5% actually, which is a fully loaded fund. Okay? So again, 2 to 8.5% of the money that you put into an open-ended loaded fund will go to pay a sales charge. The load is in addition to the management fee. So don't forget that. If you have a no-load fund, don't think it's free. It's not free. You don't pay a sales charge to get into the fund, but you will pay a management fee every quarter. Okay? Loads can be charged when the initial investment is made, and this is called a front-end load, or when shares are liquidated, and this is called a rear-end or back-end or redemption charge. Okay? Sometimes redemption charges are structured to decline as the investor's holding period increases, and that often you'll start with like an 8% redemption charge. You won't be charged anything up front. But if you sell within the first year, you'll pay 8%. If you sell in the second year, you'll pay a 6% charge, 4% in the third year, 2% in the fourth year. And after the fourth year, if you want to sell, you don't pay any redemption charges. Okay? The decision of whether to levy a load is related to how an investment company markets or distributes the fund. How do they get the fund in front of the end customer? A fund can be marketed through stockbrokers, through agents, stockbrokers, insurance agents, financial planners, okay? If this is the case, so a mutual fund will be formed and they will reach out to all of these account executives. They'll reach out to the firms and try to cut deals with all these firms. Then the selling agents are compensated for selling the fund through the load, and sometimes also by sharing a portion of the quarterly management fee. So the person who recommends, advises, or sells you the fund will get paid a sales commission plus sometimes a percentage of the quarterly management fee. So the sales commission is a one-time upfront fee paid by the mutual fund company, actually paid by the customer to the mutual fund company, and then the mutual fund company turns around and pays it to the broker, plus a percentage of the ongoing quarterly management fee. And this is called a trailer fee or a 12B1 fee. 12B1 is the SEC regulation that allows brokers to share in the management fee. These are questions you have to ask anyone who's selling you a fund. How much are you getting paid? Are you getting paid an upfront fee? And are you getting paid a part of the ongoing management fee? These are important questions to ask, and you shouldn't be shy about asking them. All right. Alternatively, a fund can be marketed in a passive manner using television, print ads, 800 numbers. Instead of having someone reach out to customers, it's just advertising that's done. Okay? Funds marketed, and I guess when I wrote this, the internet wasn't a big distribution channel, but it sure is now. Funds marketed in this way typically charge no sales commission, no load funds. It is important to note two things about load versus no load funds. First, brokers or planners or advisors or agents often try to sell loaded funds. That's how they get paid, and they claim that the funds have a better performance record. Okay? And this is usually very misleading, not true, and it is obviously self-serving. They say it because they want to sell the fund. Be careful with this. An investor must consider each mutual fund, load or no load, on a case-by-case basis. How is the fund doing? There is just no truth to the argument that loaded funds do better as a group than no load funds. Okay? Don't buy into that. Secondly, regardless of whether a fund charges a load or not, all funds levy a management fee, okay, and have transaction costs deducted from the fund. The buying and selling costs money, and investors are charged money for it. And so when you put together the management fee and the expenses of running the fund, you have what's called an expense ratio. This is the cost of the fund, and you need to take a look at it. Okay? Please understand that sometimes a bank will tell a customer that they are not charging the customer for mutual fund investments. What they do not tell the customer is that the mutual fund company is charging the customer and is in turn paying the bank. Okay? So when someone from a bank, and I've had this happen several times in meetings, where I was proposing offering my services to a large 401k plan or to wealthy individuals, and they would say, well, we're talking to our banker, and the banker says they'll manage the money for free. It's not true. It is misleading, it is deceptive, it is a lie. What happens is the banks will sell you the funds, and you will pay fees to the fund company, and the fund company will then turn around and pay the bank. Remember, people, no one does anything in business for free. They're getting paid from somebody, and it comes out of your pocket as the investor. Okay? Since the charges come out of the fund, an investor must read the fund's annual report to see the charges. You've got to look to see what the charges are. Ask any advisor that wants to use funds or recommends or advises that you use funds, ask them what the charges are. Research it for yourself. Fees are not typically disclosed in quarterly updates sent by mutual fund companies. You've got to read the annual report. Similarly, the holdings and the transactions done by mutual funds are not disclosed in a timely manner. They are disclosed, but 45 days after the end of a quarter before you can see transactions. All right, lastly on this no load versus load debate. Lastly, the returns earned by individual holders, the returns are not provided by mutual fund companies. They just provide the return of the fund. Okay? So what am I talking about? Your return versus the return of the fund. Why might they be different? Why might your return in the fund be different from the return of the fund? Well, what if the individual bought or sold some of the fund during the quarter? The fund reports how money that was in the fund for the entire quarter did. If you bought or sold at some point after the beginning of the quarter and before the end of the quarter, then your return will look different. All right? This would affect returns. Regulatory authorities are working on these issues to require mutual funds to provide actual returns to investors. All right, that's the end of this section of this clip, and we'll move on in the next clip. Until then, shalom.